All right, Damon, thanks so much for joining us on the Count on Change podcast. Do you want to give everyone a quick rundown of your background and how we know each other?
Good to see you, Lee. So background, I've been in and around technology for the last 20 plus odd years. Most of that was spent in either payments industry, like Amex, Visa, WorldPay, and then we know each other from our time at Xero. So I spent 5 years there. It was like probably five of the best years of my professional career. Now I'm an independent advisor to fast-growing businesses and the author of the A to Z of accounting software.
Definitely. And we'll come to that because that's a really interesting touch point to come on to, the A to Z. But I think it's fair to say that we were sort of at the cutting edge even 5-10 years ago, weren't we, with cloud and stuff
Yeah.
like that? But it just sort of seems to pale into insignificance compared to the speed and the change that's going on at the moment. Like, what do you see as the main challenges for accountants right now on the tech side?
Oh, I mean, I think it's there's so much noise in the market. Like, we've been through kind of the when Xero came into the market, and obviously that brought a ton of change from, the UK accountants, that were probably technology wise, the best they had was Sage, and and cloud accounting was a big sort of step change. But I think what you're seeing now with AI is that it's changing everything, and it's like so there's so much noise in the market. A lot of it is hype, and a lot of it is just this natural hype cycle. But I think AI is different because the changes are happening more frequently. And as every model gets released and every new thing from Anthropic or OpenAI comes in, it it compounds. So like it compounds, like the models get better, they feed the models, and it gets harder and harder to keep up for people. So I think that's the biggest thing is like just there's so much noise out there. And what you want to do is try and work out where you can separate the LinkedIn hype from the actual facts, and that's something I've been trying to do myself as I stepped out of an operator role, and I plus in before that zero to actually look at the market and try and work out which way's up and which way's down.
I think the other dimension to that challenge is that I sometimes equate accountants to like kids in a toy shop, right? Because they'll just go and get the shiny thing, or some of them when they go to a big show. And if you think something like Zero or even Sage was like those really nice Lego kits that have got like kind of like Harry Potter's Hogwarts or whatever, they're complete, right? They're only one thing, but it's beautiful. Now we've just moved to a point where it's just you've got an infinite supply of Lego bricks and you can build whatever you want. And you almost just go back and go, oh my God, it's too overwhelming to know even where to start, isn't it? The possibilities are just mind-boggling. So what are the kind of start points do you think for firms to begin to interact with this stuff?
Well, when it comes to AI and all the plethora of technology, I mean, I would say start by looking at the A to Z of accounting software, because I've mapped 300 different businesses and I've organized them into the AI capabilities, the modules that they offer, kind of their relevance for like the size of the business, whether they're for accountants, whether they're for say, the finance teams in industry. So that's a good starting point. But I think, yeah, like one size doesn't fit all. It's kind of cliche to say, and you have to pick the right thing. And I think what I say is like you've got to start, like, and you've got to take a cohort of your customers and try some stuff out. I think some of the most interesting dimensions of this is there's a sort of two big themes coming up in terms of the new players. So you've got the existing players like Xero and QuickBooks and Sage, and they are doing some really good stuff. But then you've got new players that are coming in. They break into agentic GL players and orchestration engines. That's sort of the two big categories I'm seeing. And the
Mm.
agentic ALs are like brand new, rip and replace your ledger and replace them with like AI native solutions. And the other one is like, don't rip and replace your ledger, keep your ledger, and you can integrate those orchestration engines into the product. So I would say start there for first and foremost. There's some really interesting companies out there. Artifact AI, Archie, Basis, Combinedly. That's the cohort of orchestration, which doesn't require you to rip and replace your GL. And reach out. Some of them are for bigger firms, some of them for smaller firms, some are for like companies direct. But yeah, the report will tell you all about that. But I think you've got to start, because I think, as you said, like we're on this sort of this curve, this new technology curve, but the curve is steeper than any other curve we've ever seen. Things are changing so much quicker, and so therefore the risk of waiting is bigger. So it doesn't mean you need to change anything, but you need to be aware of what's going on in the market.
Totally agree. I think that the other thing that firms might be sensible to pay attention to is we'll have both seen this, right? Where you get firms, they just chase the tools and they chase the solutions without really understanding the problem. And I know that fairly commonly in a lot of firms, it's certainly in big firms, it's quite difficult to get a consistent workflow and process, right? People do things different ways. And so then it's quite difficult to go, right, we're going to put this new tool in because everyone's going to want to do it in slightly different ways. So I think figuring that stuff out is a really good start point, and then go to market and look for something that will improve upon what you're doing. But
Yeah.
I mean, just staying on top of this stuff must be almost a full-time job. Like, how are you? Because you've gone through 330 odd apps in the report. Like, they must have changed a bit in the time you were building it. So, how are you managing that?
Well, that's a good question. Lots of late nights and yeah, kind of coffee. But I think no, seriously. I mean, I use AI a lot. Like, so the report that I built was entirely built with the support of Claude. The research that I do. So like, I'll go out and do AI based research on these companies first as a first pass, and then I'll go through and do my own primary research. And I haven't done that for everyone, but I've done that for the most important. And then obviously I have calls with a lot of the vendors, and those calls I record and I transcribe those calls and I capture that information. So, as I'm doing this, there's no effect, there's no way I could have done this in the time that I did it 6 months ago, without, well, maybe 6 months ago I might have been able to do it, but with like the latest models, it's made it like so much more accurate and better. But there'd be no way before AI I could ever really do this, and build this report in such a small amount of time. So I think it's a great use case. And for me, using that information, like, I think it's really important. This is something you come across a lot in accountancy as well. It's like, that well, you can't trust AI. It's like it imagines things. Accountant's deterministic and AI is probabilistic. And that is all true. The way I think about it is you can use AI to do all the research and stuff, but like you have to have deterministic foundations. I've got my system of record is a very, very tightly held database that I have to manage exception handling. AI wants to make any changes to what it finds. And that's the same with accountancy. So, your general ledger and what's in there is your source of truth. That is like the provenance layer of facts, and you need to protect that at all costs and use AI effectively. So I think, yeah, but like, so there are warnings in there, but it's, that's how I've done it, and we'll continue to do it. But it's really important for me that there is real editorial oversight in that,
Yeah.
just as it would be for an accounting practice to have oversight in what they ship to the auditors and the regulators and HMRC, because, like I say in the report, AI is not going to go to jail for you. There has to be a human sign off what you end up submitting, and so it's really important that whatever you put in place, hacking something together in Claude code yourself could be dangerous if you don't have those guardrails in place.
Yeah, you can pass on some of the work, but you can't pass on the accountability, right? I think when people go, AI is going to be a real challenge to accountants, I think, well, there's always going to be a point there where someone's got to be accountable for something. And so you can't outsource that, right?
So Lee, that is like one of the biggest sort of like forgotten bits in all of this, right? People
Mm.
talk about, um, you know, you've got like moats around like your business with that protect you against AI, and there's like a distribution moat. There is like, so you're a big company, you can protect yourself with that.
From what you've just said there, I think what you've got that a lot of people don't have is a whole system of frameworks and scaffolding and workflows that you've crafted for yourself around these tools. Like, you've got an understanding of, right, I'm going to use it for this, but not for that. And I think that's a massive, massive part that people struggle with, because when you're just looking at the blank page of ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or whatever, and the cursor's blinking away, you have none of that, right? All you've got is, oh, okay, I can type in, ask it some questions. So I'd be really interested to hear more about how you've developed those approaches, attitudes, and workflows towards using this sort of tech. Because it's not like there's a playbook for it at the minute, is there?
No, there isn't a playbook. And actually, like, some of the tooling isn't great when it comes to sort of, obvious tutorials. You've got to ask it. You can ask it questions. You can ask it anything, and it'll give you the answer. But you kind of got to know where to start. And I think that is the danger sometimes of like tools like Claude. So I use Claude Cowork primarily as the sort of tool. I loaded up all of the kind of underlying assets, call recordings, transcripts. I created like a whole bunch of different skills that can get called upon when executing a job. So, like you don't have to just keep repeating yourself. You've got this sort of database of skills. And then, yeah, like kind of like there's a set of sort of foundations that you need to take to get it set up and running. Now, I'm no expert, and there are all these new product changes that come in that you're trying to grapple with. But I think it's having that mindset of creating standard operating procedures
Mm.
and standard operating models that the chat interface can call upon. And every time you make a change to that fundamental underlying operating system, you update the memory, you update your skills. And so, you're not going to have the problem of kind of going back and it not having that context. Store in the long-term memory, right? Is I guess the way to do it. And like a human, I mean, my long-term memory is actually not bad. My short-term memory is pretty bad, but like we do it automatically, and I don't think the models are quite there yet to kind of like categorize and store some of that long-term memory. So you've got to kind of do it for them. I'm sure it'll change. Context windows are getting bigger because 4.7 came out, and it's got like I think it's a 10x context window now from 4.6, and so it can go back and look at all sorts of stuff. But I think yeah, like having a very structured, system-oriented approach to it makes sense. The other side of that, I think, just to say, is that like then you've got some of these other native products that are built for accounting practices, like Archie, like Digits, like Artifact AI, which have done all that groundwork. They've already built a lot of that scaffolding and systems. Depending on who you are and whether you've got a bigger checkbook than maybe a sole practitioner, you might want to really consider looking at those systems because they've done a lot of that thinking for you.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think there's also people talking about the idea that accountants will just go away and start vibe coding their own stuff, and that becomes a threat to the SaaS space. Just like AI eating accountants, I don't believe that either, because like just because I could go down to the builder's yard and get myself a load of bricks, it doesn't mean I'm a builder and know how it's going to work, right? So when you're dealing with like financial tools and things like Xero that are ISO 27001 certified, someone's not going to hack into it. Again, there's the accountability. I can't see people going and trying to vibe code that sort of stuff. But that must be a temptation for some people, right? It's like, oh, I could go and make this, or I could go and do that thing. So where would you caution them to stop short and to go, actually, probably don't try and build that. You just stick with what you know.
So firstly, it's just funny because like it reminded me the other day I had ChatGPT and there was a hole in the wall, and I took a photo and said, "Chat, how do I fix this hole in the wall?" And it basically sent a picture back with the hole fixed, and I was like, "That's not what I meant." I was like, "Geez, it's dangerous, isn't it?" Like, and I should really, as a grown adult, know how to fix a hole in the wall without asking ChatGPT. What I found is that sort of in the process I've had in building, the A to Z side and the stuff I'm doing is like, it's like if you can think it, is it possible? It usually is, but like I have this sort of like, and I think a lot of people have this sort of sense of like, I don't want to learn that new thing. I don't want to try. I want to just go back to my way of doing it. Like, I want to update the database in a spreadsheet because I'm used to spreadsheets, and I'm like, no, you've got to go into the core database and you've got to like properly update it when you're building this out. And it's
Mm.
like just simple things like that that I think mean that the best thing to do is actually like just do it. Like you're not going to break anything by trying things out, and you'll at least learn and you'll get context around like how these things work. Now, whether you apply that in live to your kind of client state, that's another kettle of fish. And I think obviously you need to have the right input from humans that are part of like the whole ecosystem. So I mean, I know these software providers I talk to, a lot of them actually have hired like people from regulators or auditors that can go in and say, okay, what are you building? Like, this is what I'm going to want to see. because we were saying before, like, AI is not going to take the hit in jail for you. And if you're building stuff now, you might not realize that till the auditors come knocking in 3 years' time, that you made a horrible mistake in what you built now. Actually, having the right kind of expert advice from, and I think, regulators, auditors, and if you can, if they pick up the phone, HMRC, to make sure that what you're doing actually marries up with the job at hand, which is ultimately to, for an accountant, their job is to remove, and I think it was said in the report, I can't remember who said it now, but it was Greg Sheehan, and it's like, accounting is not about basically crunching the numbers, but it's not just about that. It's about removing the anxiety for that client of dealing with HMRC, and having that comfort, that client has that comfort that they've got a trained professional. And that just doesn't go away with AI. In fact, it probably becomes more important because actually the trained professional now needs to use automation in a safe way. And so, yeah, I think that's really important. Don't start messing around with real data with real customers before you've sought proper input from professionals.
So I think we'll start to see a dynamic over the next few years where the firms that are using these things can get more work out the door, like we saw with Xero, right? It just creates this advantage, and then everybody sort of has to follow, or they're at a disadvantage, right? It sort of tips over time. And so I think we'll start to see that with AI. The firms that are using automations, the firms that are just speeding things up, getting their work done more effectively, will have that advantage. I feel like people are going to get pressured into doing it, but equally, it feels like we're in a bit of a honeymoon period at the moment. Now, no one's really, that I've seen, going really like far ahead with it and not forcing everyone else to drag them along. And there's still quite a nice little window here where you can experiment, play with things, learn how it works, and develop your own little workflows around it. And that probably lasts for the next maybe 6 months to a year or so. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. And actually, on the report, in the 7th chapter, I've got these clocks of all the
Right.
different moving parts, and I put a hypothesis of, like, what are HMRC going to do? What's the
Yeah.
demographic shift in accounting? Is someone going to come and reprice massively? The barriers to entry, where are they at the moment? And you can fiddle around with the dials to kind of work out where you think it's going to land. So I think there's probably like a 3 or 4 year window of when the kind of the tipping point is
Yeah.
uh, for mass change, like the bit that everyone in the industry will feel it. And I think it can be anywhere between, like, probably in 6 months to maybe even 3 or 4 years. And there's a few variables you can tweak around with. So I'll let you have a play around and look at that. But I think like it was Stuart McLeod is the founder of Archie, ex-founder of Carbon, who said it the best for me, was that it only takes one.
Yeah.
It only takes, like, if a firm can do, what was it, 100 grand audit, 100 grand audit for 10 grand, only one practice like needs to actually do that. The whole market moves overnight. It's like,
Sure.
and I think the cost to execute is going to create a bifurcation in the market from the haves and the have-nots. And I'd much rather be in the haves
Yeah.
than the have-nots. And yeah, like, because when suddenly a firm can deliver at scale for better margins and can expand their TAM out to smaller firms or larger firms because they just are, like, exponentially more efficient, you don't want to be behind that curve. And I think, a lot of, you remember the Xero days, there was a lot of the haves on Xero, and there were a lot of the have-nots, usually like writing shit in the bottom of, like, accounting webs, like, comment section about, like, you remember that? Like, it's like, it'll never last, I'm not going to trust the cloud and all that sort of stuff. And I think
Honestly.
it was just like, and so, like, but I think we are at the beginning. We really are at the beginning. Like, no one is really behind at the moment. But I do think there is going to be, some players that flip the story, because from, like, software, being Xero in the logo, I don't think it's going to be about software anymore. I think it's going to be about service, and it is going to actually play perfectly to the accounting professionals that trusted, kind of provenance. That they really are the trusted partner at the front of it, and in the back end, the technology is like cutting edge, but like no one cares about the technology anymore. They just want they care about the outcomes. They care about what that they're not in jail, that their books are kept well. They've got real time data on their business, and I think it's an amazing time to be in accounting practice, because it's not going to be about, oh, are you using Xero or are you using Intuit or QuickBooks? It's going to be about like, oh, well, that was perfect. You got that done really quickly. Everything's in real time. I can't believe it. I don't have to wait every quarter to have my bookkeeping done. It's just done, right? And that's going to, and when someone does that, it's going to change the market. And I think everyone can benefit from that. You just need to focus on that as a vision, versus focusing on like the concern around my job or my firm. Like, it's focused on the vision. And the challenge is that's not going to be for everyone. Like a lot of people aren't going to want to dip their toes in the water. Like, I go out for dinner and talk about AI, and it's like the table just goes quiet and everyone's like, it's on one again. And so I get it. It's not for everyone, but like like this is a technology shift that I think everyone needs to at least be aware of.
I think it's going to really reward people with a slightly more entrepreneurial mindset, because I've heard some concerns from people who are employees and go, I don't know if I should use AI because it's sort of cheating, like I'm still getting paid,
Yes.
and should I do that? My view is, oh yeah, absolutely. It's effectively a multiplying factor of the value you can deliver, and any sensible employer would want the maximum value out of you. So yeah, use them. You start then creating effectively a team around yourself, don't you? Like you're coming in as an entrepreneur. It's here's me, here's my team, here's what we can all deliver. It just happens that some of that is AI tools rather than human beings, right? And yeah, I think people that think like that will be rewarded.
Well, I think it's a funny one, isn't it? Because like, you can use AI as a shortcut for hard work, like, and that's not good. I've used AI to kind of like pull together 330 like, companies and list them, categorize what they do and stuff. And like, there's a little part of me going, don't tell people that. It's like you didn't do the work, you haven't put the time in. But like, I couldn't have done it if I hadn't have had like agents running that sort of information for me. I couldn't have coded the website. I couldn't have built the webhooks. I couldn't have done any of that if I hadn't had support. And so it's not cheating. Like look at the IT industry. You know, the 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 head of product at Claude uses Claude to build the products, and now Claude is shipping faster than anyone's
Yeah.
ever seen. It's not cheating, and I think like the IT industry have got that right now. It's like roles have changed. Like a software engineer who was an amazing coder probably is having to reskill to be an amazing manager of
Mm.
agents that code. And I think that just applies across every industry. But yeah, you can definitely misuse it. And I was tempted at times in writing the report to kind of like have it write things for me. And it did. It helped me, right? It helped me with grammar, and it helped me with like ideas that I would bounce off, but like not as much as like people, not as much as like practitioners, not as much as kind of ex-colleagues or CFOs or, and other people. So, but I used it, and unashamedly, because I think you can do more. You just got to use it for the right things.
What would quote unquote properly look like? It'd be, well, you'd hire a research assistant and you'd hire a graphic designer to lay out the document, and you'd hire a proofreader and a copywriter, and but you would have a team around you. So one way or the other, it's not going to be just you that does it. But I think it'd be challenging.
But if I did all of that, I would not be sat here with a report launched like this week. I wouldn't be able to afford it. I'd probably have people off on sick leave. Like all sorts of stuff. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but like, there is a risk, right? Like there's a risk in anything that like, the amount of times, I've spent with AI building things that I want to be production ready, and it just gets things wrong and things and hallucinates. It does happen all the time. So, it's but the only way to find that out, I can't find that out just by like kind of like sitting around a pub whinging about it. The only way out about it is actually using it and giving it a crack, and now I'm better for it. But like I've still got tons to learn, as I think
Yeah.
everyone has. Like,
Well, it's just changing so fast as well, right? Even if you were in the top 1% of understanding on at the beginning of the week, then a load of new product gets shipped later in the week, and you've got that
Yeah.
headroom that you've got to fill with knowledge again. But one of the approaches that I heard recently that changed my attitude a little bit to how I worked and then helped me get more out of these sorts of tools is the 10-80-10 principle. So you do the first 10% of work by scoping it and deciding what you want to do, asking the right questions, setting the right context. Let the AI do the middle 80% of the work, and then you do the last 10%. So I effectively
Yeah.
treat it like an intern, or a little employee that goes and does things. But crucially, you've got those bookends there so that you're directing and you're guiding the output. Like, is that how you see it, or have you got a different approach?
Yeah, it's pretty good. Like you got to put the groundwork in up front.
Yeah,
It's the like the black you say, as you say, you got the screen with the little button. It's like, how can we help? But it's like actually just like jumping in, can be it can be tempting, but maybe jumping in with like okay, what am I trying to achieve here? And like the scaffolding and what do I need to think about? And like how, like line up the vision. It's like any business, right? Like it's like any company, you can meander along and just like, twists and turns and see how things go. That doesn't usually work too well, but you can have like a big vision, right? And remember what it was like at Xero. I still remember our purpose. I still remember our mission. I still remember our values. And like those things were sort of indoctrinated in Xero as a company, which is why it was such an amazing company to work for because, you had Rod charging around. He had this really super clear vision, and we all believed that we were doing something that was much bigger than ourselves. And like, he, like didn't just meander through that. Like that was deliberate, and that vision stuck and held through for years and years and years. So the same principle applies in building AI. Is really thinking about what you want to do, and it'll change. Like my whole journey changed in building the report. Like I started out just wanted to like start with a spreadsheet and like what are the interests in software companies, and then it just evolved into. And then I was like, oh, well, actually, I can have a bigger vision for that. And now I've got a bigger vision, even more around where I could take it if anyone wants to read it, but I'll wait and see what the reading stats say before I commit to that just yet.
yeah, definitely. And before we wrap up, I do want to touch a little bit more on the report because there's a lot to it, right? And I think it's come at a very good time because, like we said right at the beginning, there's so much noise, so many things happening. Just skim us through a couple of things that the report does because I know it's got a great directory in there. You can go and find tools and see what's going on. But for people that haven't come across it or are really only dipping their toe into AI tools to begin with, how can this guide help?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, for starters, it has got a directory, but it's not just a directory. It's like there's 300 plus businesses in there. It cuts across about 20 different dimensions. Every business is rated on like their level of AI maturity, the products and solutions that they offer, where they sit in the stack, and a bit of a thesis of like my perspective on where I think they sit and where I think they're going. So that's great because you can go and you can look at companies and you can compare them and you can say which ones actually match me. And that's great. But I didn't want to build like another kind of G2 or a Trustpilot or like just a big database of stuff, pay to play kind of directory. I wanted it to be sort of have real editorial kind of chops. So big part of it is a report in there. You can read it. You can listen to an AI version of me commentating the report, which is quite like weird. I sound strangely Australian. I'm a Kiwi, not Australian. And you can ask it questions as well. So there's an AI chat in there. So because half the time, like people won't go, oh my god, it's 20,000 words. I'm not reading that. So just ask it.
Yeah.
Like you can just go out and you can like type and you can ask anything and it's all trained on the report. So it'll help. So, but yeah, like big themes in there as well. There's big themes around like what's going to happen to the big general ledgers like Xero and Sage and Intuit. Like they're at a real interesting pivot in the journey, and like there's a whole bit in there around, kind of the GLs becoming infrastructure, not necessarily like the front end anymore, which
Mm.
is something that I've seen in the past, certainly from my payments days. Yeah, there's a lot in there around like AI is really just the middle bit of accounting. Like you still got to chase clients and you still got to deal with the regulators. AI isn't very good at that sort of side of it, but there's some interesting players that are entering in that space. And I think probably one of the biggest takeaways is like this idea of wet code. In this context, it's about the tacit knowledge that a firm has, all those unspoken rules, all those unspoken designs and the ways they approve stuff. Like, why does a partner approve stuff in a workflow? He's never written it down. It's like it's down to the
Got it.
human.
Yeah.
And actually, there's that's a really big theme around how AI, combination of probabilistic and deterministic AI, actually can start to codify some of the decisions that are made in a firm. And that's really interesting in terms of, like, you've got so many partners that are trying to sell their business or
Yeah.
retiring, and who can they hand it over to? And actually, with AI, they could hand it over to, and they can codify that in a much simpler way. So, like, there's loads in there. But yeah, hopefully people find it interesting and read it. God, I feel like I'm really doing a pitch on it, but it's you don't have to, you can, a lot of it's free as well. But like, if you want to get all the fun stuff, you know, um, send me some money, because I want to keep doing it because it's so much fun.
Definitely. Well, I'll stick the link to the report in the
Thanks,
show
mate.
notes so people can find it. But if they want to connect with you, Damon, and or follow you and hear what you've got to say, what's the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Mr. Damon Anderson on LinkedIn, and that's probably it. Otherwise, send me an email on the report at hello@a2z aiaccounting.com, and yeah, don't forget to go to the website. Same URL. I'm sure it'll appear in the follow up. So yeah, thanks, Lee.
Well, great chatting, Damon. Fascinating, and we'll have to have a part two soon.
Mate, look forward to it. Cheers, mate.